All right, let's dive right into this. Today, we're exploring a piece of history that, honestly, reads way less like a dry military textbook and much more like a dramatic documentary thriller. We are looking at the true story of the 88mm flak gun, a weapon whose sheer versatility literally changed the landscape of mechanized warfare forever. And here's the central mystery of our explainer today. Think of this as tracking the arc of a misunderstood prodigy of warfare. How exactly did a piece of artillery, engineered so meticulously to aim at the sky and swat down high-altitude bombers, somehow end up becoming the most feared and lethal tank killer on the ground? To understand that wild transformation, we really has to look at the visceral, psychological impact this weapon had on the soldiers who faced it. Section 1. The Legend of the 88, a psychological toll. If you were an Allied soldier, the sheer terror of this weapon wasn't just about its destructive power. It was actually baked into the terrifying physics of how it sounded. Because the projectile traveled faster than the speed of sound, the entire auditory experience was completely backward. As the historian and veteran Paul Fussell famously described it, the first thing you heard was the crack of the shell bursting, and then you heard the thump of the gun firing. It was this deeply unnatural sound that haunted an entire generation of soldiers. That sheer, terrifying velocity bred a massive mythos around the weapon. But even just the way people talked about it revealed a deep divide. To the terrified Allies, it was ominously, and pretty much universally, known as the 88. But to the German operators who actually manned it, it was simply referred to as the 88. But before it became a ground combat legend, we've got to remember its true origins. Section 2, Built for the Skies, Origins of the 88. Right after the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles severely restricted German weapon procurement, so Krupp engineers worked in secret with the Swedish company Bofors to design a completely new gun. Prototypes actually began way back in 1928. By the time the Nazi regime took power in 1933, widespread production kicked in. It got its first real gritty combat test during the Spanish Civil War in 1936 with the Condor Legion, and by the 1940 Battle of France, it was fully ready for a much wider global conflict. And what exactly was it considered at this point? Well, its official German name pretty much tells you everything about its literal intended purpose. Flugzeugabwehrkanone translates directly to aircraft defense cannon, and since that's a total tongue twister of a word, it was simply abbreviated by the Germans to Flak. Now, what's absolutely fascinating about these technical specifications is how they made it uniquely adaptable for the pure chaos of war. We're talking about a 4.93-meter L56 barrel capable of sustaining a rapid fire rate of 15 to 20 rounds per minute. But the real game changer? That was the Sonderanhänger 202 carriage. It gave the gun an incredibly quick 2.5-minute tactical setup time. This meant a massive, heavy anti-aircraft gun could be rapidly deployed and even fired while it was still fully mounted on its wheels. That is unheard of mobility. And that remarkable mobility set the stage for one of the greatest tactical pivots in military history. Section 3, Accidental Tank Killer, a battlefield pivot. Because the true potential of the 88 wasn't unlocked in some pristine testing facility. No, it was unlocked in desperate, chaotic battlefield moments. During the 1940 Battle of Arras, the German advance was suddenly totally stalled by heavily armored British Matilda II and French Char B-1 bis tanks. Standard German anti-tank guns were literally just bouncing right off them. So, in a total Hail Mary move, Erwin Rommel ordered his 88mm anti-aircraft guns lowered horizontally to blast the tanks directly, and it was devastatingly effective. Rommel later perfected this brutal tactic in North Africa, baiting British tanks into concealed traps at a place famously dubbed Hellfire Pass. To give you a real sense of just how catastrophic this improvisation was, just think about this number. 152. That is the jaw-dropping number of heavily armored tanks completely destroyed by the 88 in the Battle of France alone. And the reason they were able to destroy so many tanks all comes down to another number, 820. That is 820 meters per second. That was the absolutely terrifying muzzle velocity of the Flak 18 and 36 models. Across the vast, flat, open terrain of North Africa and the Eastern Front, it became a completely unparalleled weapon. It was capable of destroying targets from over 2 kilometers away. That's long before Allied tank crews even knew they know their range. But of course, a gun is essentially just a metal tube without the incredible science going on inside it. Section 4, Ammunition Secrets, Forensic Analysis. According to a 1943 U.S. War Department technical manual, the brutal armor-piercing capabilities across long distances were frankly staggering. Just to put this into perspective, even at 2,000 yards away, an 88mm armor-piercing capped projectile could still slice through nearly 4 inches of homogeneous armor plate. There was practically no Allied tank in the early years of the war that could withstand that kind of intense kinetic energy. That same field manual also breaks down the visual and structural differences of the rounds, so soldiers could actually identify them on the fly. The armor-piercing Panzergranate rounds were painted black and featured these really unique bimetallic double-rotating bands. Meanwhile, the high-explosive spring granate rounds used for aircraft were painted yellow and used powdered iron bands impregnated with wax. These double 360-degree crimps and lead gaskets instantly distinguished them from their U.S. equivalents. So the crucial point here is that the Germans also engineered highly technical fuse types depending entirely on what they were shooting at. You had a 30-second spring-wound time fuse, an inertia-operated time fuse, a highly sensitive percussion fuse for super quick or delayed ground detonation, and even a base detonating fuse specifically for the armor-piercing rounds. This sheer variety of ammunition and fuse types made the 88s an incredibly versatile tool. I mean, it could rip a high-altitude bomber from the sky 1 minute and punch straight through a 2-meter concrete bunker the very next. Now, I want to pose a question to you that bridges 2 completely different historical eras. What does a fearsome World War II Tiger tank have in common with an obscure commercial hunting rifle from the early 2000s? I know, it sounds like a trick question, but the answer is truly mind-blowing. They both utilized identical electric primer technology. When the 88mm was adapted into the KWK-36 main gun for the Tiger tank, it used the C/22 electric primer. This allowed the gun to be fired via a jolt of an electrical current rather than a traditional mechanical firing pin. Decades later, the Remington Atronics hunting rifle tried to revolutionize the civilian market using this exact same concept, literally a 9-volt battery igniting an electronic primer to reduce lock time. Now, the Atronics was a massive commercial failure, but it perfectly illustrates how a quote-unquote failed civilian tech concept actually powered history's most infamous tank. But despite all this brilliant ballistics work, the story of the 88 isn't just about engineering. It's actually heavily about internal institutional drama. Section 5. Turf Wars. Luftwaffe versus Army. You see, unlike Allied armies, the anti-aircraft flak arm in Nazi Germany was controlled entirely by the Luftwaffe, the Air Force. This created a completely bizarre jurisdictional divide right on the battlefield. You literally had Air Force personnel wearing Air Force uniforms under Air Force Administrative Command, operating these absolutely vital ground anti-tank batteries. They were attached to, but not organically a part of, the Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions who actually desperately needed the tank defense. And as you can imagine, this rigid division of command repeatedly hindered the seamless deployment of the weapon. But ultimately, the sheer battlefield impact of the 88 could not be contained by administrative red tape. Section 6. Legacy of the 88, Changing Warfare. The 88 was so overwhelmingly lethal that it literally forced the Allies to completely redesign their tanks, adding much thicker armor and bigger guns just to have a chance at surviving it. It also spawned dedicated, low-silhouette anti-tank guns based on that exact same 88mm caliber. In July 1944, Luftwaffe Major Hans von Luck famously repurposed an 88mm anti-aircraft battery during Operation Goodwood, destroying 20 British tanks in mere seconds. It completely cemented the gun as a weapon that forever changed the rules of mechanized combat. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Was the 88mm flat gun a visionary masterpiece of engineering, perfectly designed for the battlefield? Or was it simply a desperate, accidental adaptation that just happened to alter the course of military history? The truth probably lies somewhere right in the chaos between the two. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer today, and I really hope this deep dive leaves you eager to uncover even more incredible true stories from the past.